Satyadharma Reflection on April 12, 2022. Open up widely in the way that is not about anything. Disregard even from the disregard itself absolutely, so that it will cut off the cycle of mental karma and mental difficulties. This will purify through the extinction altogether. Keep on opening up eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind that already exist. Keep them on opening. If closing, they will be blocked. Everything is anicca. It's flowing and releasing at all times in itself. Therefore, don't block it. Otherwise, it's gonna be stuck by projecting, focusing that overlays. It will become blocked. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, with the opening of the senses and sense perceptions. The opening that doesn't grasp itself. Keep the senses and sense perception opening through the awakening and the brightening. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind of the awakening. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind, inside and outside of the awakening and the brightening. Keep them open well. In the way of the disregard, from the disregard itself altogether. Simultaneously, don't be obsessed with fabrications of thoughts, emotions and feelings. It's a waste of time. Fabrication of thoughts, recalls, emotions and feelings, they are mental difficulties. It's a waste of time. Uninvolved with the disregarding. Disregard from the disregard itself, everything is in the way of purification through the extinction simultaneously. The awakening is not relevant to itself. The brightening is not relevant to itself simultaneously. It will be automatic purification of the emptiness. Don't waste the time to crystallize the mind, to be in stillness, stagnant, and indifference. This is all about sinking. The awakening and the brightening is not relevant to itself. Senses and sense perceptions that are already awakened and brightened go ahead in the way of uninvolved with itself. The awakening is not involved with itself. The brightening is not relevant to itself. The disregarding is uninvolved with itself. This will be automatic purification without traces of the emptiness. Let's purify only without adding anything further. Don't be obsessed with being samsara of traits, emotions. Don't be obsessed with samsara of thoughts, recalls, fabrications of thoughts and recalls, on and on. Even uninvolved is not involved with itself. With these, it will purify through the emptiness instantly. The brightening is not relevant to itself. The awakening is not relevant to itself. This will be beyond awakening, beyond brightening. Disregard is not relevant to itself, uninvolved with itself. With this, it will be beyond the normal disregarding. It turns into the boundless purification, which is automatic. Don't add anything further towards each other. Samsara is already a lot in itself. Whether it is thoughts, recalls, feelings, traits, emotions, there are varieties of them already. Therefore, don't add more into them. Don't add anything further. That which has nothing to do with the uninvolved itself. It will be automatic purification of the emptiness without traces instantly. Don't waste the time to fabricate thoughts. Uninvolved with the disregarding to purify right away. Don't be obsessed to sustain or create anything. Don't be obsessed to fabricate the world, purify the world instantly. That which is not involved with the body and the mind, it will be very well purifying through the emptiness for the body and the mind, uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself. It will turn into automatic purification of the emptiness. This is called Nibbana, blesses samsara. Nibbana purifies samsara. Don't waste the time to form up or create Dharma in whatever ways, in any types of Dharma. Purify it only. Uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself instantly. With this, it will help through the unwinding and releasing, help purifying through the emptiness altogether. Whether it is oneself or all things, there will be purification that is simultaneous. This is not about grabbing on one's own way. It's not about oneself or anyone or anything. As it is, oneself is not truly oneself. There is just a misleading of self-significance occasionally, that's all. The elements don't belong to anyone. Therefore, don't be delusive to take elements into oneself or as oneself, whether it is the elements of the mind or anything. So don't be delusively taking it as oneself. The anicca is not truly itself. The anatta is not truly substantial in itself. Everything is anatta and anicca all the same. Dukkha is never entrapped itself, is always bygone in itself at all times. Therefore, don't entrap the suffering. Don't entrap it. The suffering has never entrapped itself, is always bygone at all time in itself. It's anicca and anatta in the suffering itself. Therefore, don't create conflicts with the anicca and anatta and dukkha. Disregard even from the disregard itself, uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself. This will not be about something that owns anything. It will not be against the Satyadharma, not against anicca, dukkha, anatta. It's not about the mind belongs to someone or someone owns the mind. This is just occasional, stubbornly persisting. The mind doesn't belong to anyone, and anyone doesn't own the mind truly. It's just a stubborn persistence occasionally. Therefore, disregard even from the disregard itself, cut through the cutting itself. Don't be obsessed to be deludedly attached and fixated towards something that is not true. All that is non-attached in itself, in its nature at all times. The anicca has never been attached to itself at all times as it is. The anicca is shifting and changing and discarding itself at all times. No doubt. It's always shifting and changing and discarding itself at all times. No doubt about it. The doubt is because of karmic habit of the delusive attachment. It's stubbornly persisting to fixate towards that which is not about fixation. Therefore, there's doubt afterwards. That's just the delusive attachment that is stubbornly persisting occasionally. Even the delusive attachment is not real. It's just an occasional persisting stubbornly. It's anicca and dukkha in the delusive attachment itself. Let's make a conclusion towards ending to help samsara well. Disregard even from the disregard itself. The disregard has nothing to do with itself. With this, it will not be about something that grabs something. It will not be about something that is attempting to fixate with anything. There will not be against the Satyadharma. Don't be obsessed to fixate towards that which is not about fixation. The stubborn persistence is in itself anicca. There is no such a thing as real in non-attachment. It's just persisting occasionally to fixate. There is no real attachment. Even the rock itself is deteriorate within itself, thinking that it's crystallized and dense as metals. They are deteriorate at all times in itself. There is no real delusive attachment. It's just an occasional, delusively persisting. Once it's exhausted, it's already released itself. After ending of the exhaustion, the persisting is go on again. Therefore, let's conclude well to purify the conclusion itself, disregard even from the disregard itself, so that it will give ending to the cycle of the becoming, of the delusion that is circling, of the delusive attachment that is circling. If letting the persistence of the delusive attachment to dominate, then there will be always exhaustion. This is the suffering that is dominating, the Vedana, the hindrances that dominating. Disregard even from the disregard itself, simultaneously with the form up of the body and the mind and the verbal. Don't be obsessed with verbal or the mind. Uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself simultaneously, so that it will purify the form up of the mind simultaneously, so that it will purify the form up of verbal simultaneously. This is not just diligently forming up until there is a delusion with it. Don't be obsessed to form up diligently the mind until there is a delusion with the mind that is formed up of the mind, Dharma, insight, concentration, meditative powers, or even loving kindness that are formed up. Don't be obsessed with the formed up until being deluded with it. Elements, body and mind, and Dharma is formed up. So don't be obsessed to form up until being deluded with it. Let's purify it at the same time. Disregard, even from the disregard itself simultaneously. Uninvolved, even within the uninvolved itself simultaneously. This is the indication that there is no clinging and attaching in itself, no fixation and clinging. That's all. Then it will not be wrong to the Satya Dharma, to the noble truth. It's not wrong to the anicca, dukkha, and anatta. This is not to be deludedly persisting to fixate towards something that is not. Therefore, let's purify the form up of the mind simultaneously. The mind in the form of thinking, in the form of knowing and seeing. This is the traits that are formed up of the mind. The mind in the form of projecting and determination, all about mental elements or mental karma. This is all about the form of thing. It's all about that which is under the law of karma totally. The mind doesn't have anyone that owns it. There is only occasional persisting. That's all. How many hundred of times that is arising is always bygone from itself. no matter how many hundred or thousand and millions of times, it's always bygone from itself. It doesn't belong to anyone truly. And no one is truly owns the mind. That's why it's called the mind is anatta. The mind that is not the mind itself. Therefore, once it's formed up, then purify it simultaneously, no matter how it is created in various forms. Just purify its thoughts, recalls, feelings, or emotions that are formed up and created and fabricated. Let's purify them simultaneously. Disregard even from the disregard itself simultaneously. Purify through the extinction simultaneously, so that the formed up of the mind will not be deluded to itself. This is not the formed up for the sake of being deluded with it. Let's not be obsessed to form up and being deluded with the formed up. Let's purify it simultaneously. Therefore, don't waste the time much with all the formed up things. Uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself, even how the awakening or the brightening it is, uninvolved with itself. Let's purify simultaneously and instantly, no matter how narrow it is, how expansive it is, uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself. Simultaneous purification. This will be purification through the emptiness simultaneously. This is not about forming up the knowing and then be deluded to the knowing itself. Forming up is used and that's it, it's bygone. Don't be deluded to the form up after the form up. This is not to be deluded to the knowing, not for the sake of seeing or knowing. All about knowing or seeing is a form up. All the senses are just the form of things. Disregard even from the disregard itself. The disregard is not involved with itself. Purify through the extinction for the formed up of the body and mind simultaneously. Simultaneous purify through all the works that are formed up, no matter how the formed up are. Just purify through the extinction simultaneously. Don't be deluded to the formed up. Being deluded to the form up and then formed up through that, which is deluded. No is not even know itself. Therefore, don't be deluded to yes with it, or being deluded to make it as it is when it is not. No is not even know itself. This will indicate the deliberate cut through in the essence of the enlightenment, the essence of cutting deluded knowing. So don't be deluded to yes and to yes with that which is not yes or no. Don't be deluded to yes with that which is not even no itself. Therefore, disregard even from the disregard itself has to be absolute amidst the senses and sense perceptions that are already full of relations in the way that is long term or short term. Let it be absolute. disregard even from the disregard itself. This is the essence of deliberate cut-through. Let it be absolute. It indicates the essence of the enlightenment, cutting deluded knowing. Let it be absolute. Then it will help cut through for samsara onwards. Disregard even from the disregard itself constantly. Uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself constantly, simultaneously with samsara. The enlightenment is for the blessing. Cut through the knowing for the blessing as helping. This is not for the sake of oneself. The enlightenment is not bygone. It's still for helping samsara, not for the sake of oneself. Still form up to help give ending for samsara. This is not about ending or enlightenment and that's it. Still form up to help give ending and giving enlightenment for samsara. Still here, not yet going anywhere else or disappearing. Still within samsara, not going anywhere else. Still form up to help ending, to help giving the enlightenment for samsara. Still formed it up as blessing. So don't be obsessed with varieties of opinions, reasons, causes and effects, on and on. Purify the formed up well. There is no need to be considerate with opinions and insights or knowing. Disregard even from the disregard itself. Let's purify instantly through the deliberate cut-through. Don't be deluded. Don't be considerate with knowing and seeing or the clinging. Disregard even from the disregard itself. Nothing is within the disregard itself. The disregard is not involved with itself. It doesn't grasp itself. Don't be obsessed to be deludedly yes towards something that is not about anything, because no is not even no itself. So don't be deludedly yes towards that which is not yes. Even no is not no itself. With this, it will be about purification through the emptiness for the formed up. form, all the form up of seeing and knowing, purify it through the emptiness. May all beings humbly offer the Mahasankatan. May we all, together with all beings in all realms of existence, humbly offer and humbly invite the Buddhas, Mahabodhas, Mahabodhisattvas, and the Mahaparami in all graces to please preside over receiving the Mahasankatan from all of us, both the non-humans and the humans. All the merits which has arisen through Nibbana as it is in every lifetime, at every time. May all beings in all realms of existence, all the karmic debtors, the karmic debtors of the karmic debtors, be shared and be part of this giving and be part of being aligned with Nibbana as it is forever and ever. groups of beings in all realms of existence. Go ahead, let's purify through all without limits, boundlessly, for everything. Let's purify all realms of existence without keeping them, no matter which realms. They are just about realms of karmic difficulties, karmic retributions. There is no need to preserve realms. Let's purify them all instantly without limits. Use that which has nothing to do with the animal itself. Purify without limits through the emptiness instantly, beyond helping through the normal releasing and unwinding. Purify boundlessly instantly. In other words, it's called purification of the emptiness. There is no need to preserve samsara or any realms of existence. What is there to be preserved is all about anicca, dukkha, anatta. It doesn't grasp even itself. It doesn't grasp even itself. No grasping even the non-grasping itself. Therefore, don't take it into delusion. And don't use the delusion to continue with the delusion itself, to be deluded with it. Don't be obsessed to use delusion to continue with it deludedly. Let's go beyond the existence of body and mind. Disregard even from the disregard itself. Don't regret the beingness of the mind in any forms of it. Unevolved even within the unevolved itself. Let it be absolute. Don't regret the beingness of the mind and the heart in whatever forms. All the fabrication of thoughts we cause. Don't regret them. Even the brightening is not involved with itself. Even the awakening is not involved with itself. Even the uninvolved is uninvolved with itself. So don't be delusively regretting something on and on, all that relations and perceptions, being deluded to regret the form up of knowing and seeing. Desire to have the insights, and then when get them, become possessive. with them, always keeping them and being afraid to let go of it, being deluded to the knowing on and on, not bold in cutting through knowing. That is called being deluded to the knowing, to the formed up, being deluded to the formed up and continue with it. Knowing doesn't belong to anyone. If continue with having someone owning knowing, then it's called being deluded to the form up and continue with it delusively. Cut through the knowing well. Even the delusion itself is not the delusion, it's just an occasional persistence that is stubborn. The delusion is not substantial. It's also anicca and anatta. It's just an occasional persistence that is stubborn. In conclusion, disregard well that which has nothing to do with attachment or detachment. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, has nothing to do with the attachment or detachment. It has nothing to do with being deluded or not in its nature. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, well. Then it will have nothing to do with being deluded or not automatically.